Time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers. Not too long ago, two friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to." And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right. Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down. Man's old age dream, the ultimate in individual freedom consistent with law and order, or down to the ant-heap of totalitarianism. And regardless of their sincerity, their humanitarian motives, those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. In this vote harvesting time, they use terms like the Great Society, or as we were told a few days ago by the President, we must accept a greater government activity in the affairs of the people. But they've been a little more explicit in the past, and among themselves, and all of the things I now will quote have appeared in print. These are not Republican accusations. For example, they have voices that say the Cold War will end through our acceptance of a not undemocratic socialism. Another voice says the profit motive has become outmoded. It must be replaced by the incentives of the welfare state. Or our traditional system of individual freedom is incapable of solving the complex problems of the 20th century. Senator Fulbright has said at Stanford University that the Constitution is outmoded. He referred to the President as our moral teacher and our leader. And he says he is hobbled in his task by the restrictions of power imposed on him by this antiquated document. He must be freed so that he can do for us what he knows is best. And Senator Clark of Pennsylvania, another articulate spokesman, defines liberalism as meeting the material needs of the masses through the full power of centralized government. Well, I for one resent it when a representative of the people refers to you and me, the free men and women of this country, as the masses. This is a term we haven't applied to ourselves in America. But beyond that, the full power of centralized government, this was the very thing the founding fathers sought to minimize. They knew that governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people. And they know when a government sets out to do that, it must use force and coercion to achieve its purpose. They also knew, those founding fathers, that outside of its legitimate functions, government does nothing as well or as economically as the private sector of the economy. Not too long ago, a judge called me here in Los Angeles. He told me that a young woman who'd come before him for a divorce. She had 6 children, was pregnant with her 7th. Under his questioning, she revealed her husband was a laborer earning $250 a month. She wanted the divorce to get an $80 raise. She's eligible for $330 a month in the Aid to Dependent Children program. She got the idea from 2 women in her neighborhood who'd already done that very thing. Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything. Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant, it's just that they know so much that isn't so. Now, we have so many people who can't see a fat man standing beside a thin one without coming to the conclusion the fat man got that way by taking advantage of the thin one. So they're going to solve all the problems of human misery through government and government planning. Well, now, if government planning and welfare had the answer, and they've had almost 30 years of it, shouldn't we expect government to read the score to us once in a while? Shouldn't they be telling us about the decline each year in the number of people needing help, the reduction in the need for public housing? But the reverse is true. Each year the need grows greater, the program grows greater. We were told 4 years ago that 17 million people went to bed hungry each night. Well, that was probably true. They were all on a diet. But now we're told that 9.3 million families in this country are poverty-stricken on the basis of earning less than $3,000 a year. Welfare spending 10 times greater than it was in the dark depths of the Depression. We're spending $45 billion on welfare. Now do a little arithmetic and you'll find that if we divided the $45 billion up equally among those 9 million poor families, we'd be able to give each family $4,600 a year. And this, added to their present income, should eliminate poverty. Direct aid to the poor, however, is only running about $600 per family. It would seem that someplace there must be some overhead. So now we declare war on poverty, or you too can be a Bobby Baker. Now, do they honestly expect us to believe that if we add $1 billion to the $45 billion we're spending, one more program to the 30-odd we have, and remember this new program doesn't replace any, it just duplicates existing programs, do they believe that poverty is suddenly going to disappear by magic? Well, in all fairness, I should explain there is one part of the new program that isn't duplicated. This is the youth feature. We're now going to solve the dropout problem, juvenile delinquency, by reinstituting something like the old CCC camps. And we're going to put our young people in these camps. But again, we do some arithmetic and we find that we're going to spend each year just on room and board for each young person we help, $4,700 a year. We can send them to Harvard for $2,700. Of course, don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting Harvard is the answer to juvenile delinquency. But seriously, what are we doing to those we seek to help?
It's sad that history repeats itself so overtly, and yet people will comment on how history repeats itself, and yet action amongst people doesn't change. There have been many quotes, I pulled these up while he was talking, from individuals back in the past. Benjamin Franklin, who said, "Those who would give up essential liberty to produce little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." He didn't even exist in my entire life, and yet it's still applicable today. Thomas Jefferson said, "When government fears the people, there's liberty. When people fear the government, there's tyranny." And obviously Malcolm X had a lot of quotes, as you said at first, Wise, coming into this. The media is the most powerful entity on the earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. And from all of these things, it's great to look back at these videos to hear the lessons that are still applicable today. But it begs the question, why haven't we learned anything? Why are we still in the exact same position that we have been? And I would even argue that we're in a worse position because while the principles stay the same, the people have gotten dumber and lazier and more complacent and more willing to follow some type of narrative. Look at the people in the audience there. I'm assuming this is a rally just for his party, but they were sitting down, they were politely clapping, they weren't standing, they weren't screaming, no one was telling him to shut up, no one was taking a shot at him. And I'm sad that we reference things like 1984, for those of you who were forced to read that in school or who have a good English literature section in their house. When are we going to get to a point where we're going to say, hey, you know what? I love the concept. And we do this a lot in the American society. We get excited about a concept. We stand on our feet, put our hands in the air as we clap. We get really, really hype in the moment. And yet we wait for someone else to make the change. We wait for the system to make the change for us. And that can only lead towards one very obvious conclusion that we talk about all the time, and we don't want to really address it because it's fear-mongering, it's hurtful. The Democratic Party will tell you, don't worry about it. We've got you covered. We're here from the government and we're here to help. Don't worry, we'll take care of it. And it's sad that though this has been the messaging since Reagan was in office and long before them, can you really say that anything's significantly different today? Everything he said just now, outside of maybe some of the numbers, some of the math, everything he said just now is still applicable across the board. We still have an issue with juvenile delinquents. We still have an issue with individuals in this country trying to separate us. We still have two parties telling us that if you don't vote for us, you're not, extremely on the left. You're not black. You're not an American, right? And on the right, you're at most lost. The one thing he said that I love the joke. They're not ignorant. They know so much that isn't so. I think we need to go ahead and get to the point and start. Like Minister Denzel always says, I'm going to go ahead and say it. People who are on the liberal side of the house, who I'm not going to say everybody, a lot of people are just ignorant. And by the way, ignorance not stupid. It means you don't know. And I would
Right.
say a lot of them are ignorant, if not most of them, if not all of them, because they're arguing points or something that is repeated and regurgitated. We deal with this every single day. They're living in a city where they don't have access to the rest of the United States of America. Most people who live in those cities don't know the United States of America. I hope that one day we do get a shift in the country. I truthfully do. I just don't think it's going to happen coming from the government. I love seeing this stuff.
Crystal says it all the time. My people perish for lack of knowledge. And that's the reason why we continue to repeat. You know, these cycles continue to repeat because a lot of folks, like you said, don't know. And when you don't know history, it is doomed to repeat itself.
Right.
I mean, that's no different than, you know, getting in the Word of God and like really going in. I know a lot of folks, you know, are good Christians. They only want to read the New Testament, but they don't want to read the history.
Yeah.
They don't want to read those history books of the Old Testament. And then they can't understand when we say, hey, there's nothing new under the sun. If you actually go and get into the Old Testament, you know, a lot of the things that are transpiring, that were transpiring in the 80s, that were transpiring in the early 1900s, that had already happened before.
That's right.
But again, we have good Christians that will come out and say, hey, you don't need to read the Old Testament, not understanding that the Old Testament is, majority of it is just a book of history.
That's right.
You know, a large majority of it.
You cannot understand the New Testament without the Old Testament. It's just impossible.
Thank you.
Exactly.
You may think you can. You may think you can because you memorize a couple of verses here and there, but they make no sense without the Old Testament.
You're absolutely right.
Bottom line. And also, you know, that video, it shows you that how the issue is not that we don't have answers or solutions to the problems that we're facing. The answers and problems, solutions are there. The problem is that we have a lot of politicians and people who corrupt politicians and people who follow them, who thrive off of the depravity of our population, who thrive off the illiteracy of our population, who thrive off of the dependency of our population. And because of that, they don't want them to learn. And these people have gotten into our education system. You know, I heard he said about Harvard. Even back then, Harvard was going downhill. But these people are not stupid. They're very smart. And I'm not talking about the masses. I'm talking about the intellectuals that are at the top of the chain who teach the people below them how to be stupid and how to be dependent. These people are very intelligent. They're very strategic. They knew how to go into our education system and dominate and overrun them and get in positions of power there and then stop not hire anybody other than those who thought like they did. They knew how to get into Hollywood and get control over the production system and decide who was going to be hired as an actor and what kind of material they were going to create for the public to see. This is not no accident. So we have to stop being passive and have to stop acting like, you know, to speak out against these people and actually document this history so that people can see how it happened. Because understanding what's happening now is not enough. We need to understand how it happened. Because if you don't understand how it happened, you can't fight against it or undo it.
No, you're absolutely right, Minister Danzel.
You know, first of all, just in case, especially for the people in the comments, I love Ronald Reagan. I remember being so in love with him when I was a little girl. I was only 4 years old and I loved everything about him. But I want to say this, what he started off with about the story about the Cuban man and how he says we are so lucky because basically at least he has someplace that he can escape to. I think a lot of times Americans, and I've said this before, they take advantage, they take for granted the freedoms that we have here. Take for granted because since I was a little girl, I remember watching, and of course, y'all know I was born and raised here, but I also knew about other things because my family's originally from somewhere else. Right. And I remember growing up playing tennis, and I would see the kids coming in from Russia, from Germany, from China, from Japan, all these kids from around the world, from a lot of the Latin countries, and the hunger that they had to achieve was crazy. And I didn't understand it. I didn't understand. And my dad would say to me, and he would remind me, he said, Crystal, you don't understand the blessing it is to be here in America because you were born and raised here in America. And there's freedoms here that you can't get anywhere else. And so the fact that they could be here in America, get scholarships to come and play tennis over here, be able to do the things that they're able to do here, and then eventually somehow or the other get citizenship here in America, they live for this. Like people have lotteries and beg to just be here. Yes. And Americans take it for granted, especially liberal America. These liberal Americans, they take it for granted. And what I have watched over time is as Charlie Kirk used to call it, brain rot, not just Jew hate, but brain rot on its entirety be spread across the globe. During Obama's time, they forced people to adopt a lot of the liberalisms that were here in America, in other countries who didn't agree with it, by foreign aid. If you ain't do it, you're not getting money from America.
Yep.
These are the things that were happening. So then you started seeing this brain rot just spread across, this liberalism spread across the globe. And I want y'all to understand, this liberalism, they've been warning about it forever, because it was never meant to do anything but to harm us. Because it's just like Satan in the serpent in the Garden of Eden. They had everything that they needed right there. God gave them some very clear instructions.
Yep.
And they couldn't abide by those clear instructions because, of course, the serpent comes and entices them on something that the Lord said, leave it alone. They had access to every other tree. Said, just don't touch this one tree. And so that, to me, that's what liberalism is. It's like, listen, God doesn't know what he's talking about. God doesn't know. Come on now. Listen, I know you were born a man, but really, come on now. You might be something else. In fact, you're neither nor. I know God told you that, but that's not real. Or I know you're supposed to look at God for the source. No. Don't look at God. You should be looking at the government. The government should take care of you. Why keep a family together, which is what God created? Family? No. Get divorced. You can get more money if you're divorced and you're a single parent raising your child at home. So liberalism is acting as an agent of Satan to confuse the people and just destroy the world. I want y'all to stop and look at everywhere that has adopted liberalism. Look at Oregon. Look at Portland. Look at all these places. Look at California. All these places that have adopted liberalism. It has just destroyed these places. California has so many homeless people because, again, that they adopted liberalism. Stop taking for granted what we have here and trying to bring in something that has never worked. All of these people that run to America, I'm going to say what Pastor Tomey said. Pastor Tomey said it best. Everyone loves America except for Americans. The only people who don't love America is Americans.
Not all Americans, Crystal, but you're
not
right.
all Americans, not all Americans, but he was saying everywhere else, everyone wants to flood into America. They want the freedom of America. They want capitalism. They want all of that. And Americans are like, no. The liberals, of course. We want socialism. Let's get socialism in. We don't want that. We want to tax the rich and take everything. And let's see how that has worked out for every other country and how it's going to work out for America if we adopt that foolishness.
Amen.
No, you're absolutely right. And I heard something earlier today, and they were talking about, the single mothers receive upwards of about $70K a year in government subsidies, whether it's, through housing and food and healthcare and all these other types of things. And it almost seems like it's by design to destroy the family, because they understand that if we can destroy the family, we can control the people. If we can do that, and we can we can at least get the women, and if we can get the women, we can get the children as well, and then we can indoctrinate them into this system. Because when you give people 70 grand or more, depending on where you are in the country, to do the wrong thing, when the average earner only makes about 60 grand a year, $62,000 a year, working as a man, there's no incentive, for, a woman to say, you know what, let me go ahead and marry this man and build my family within this union. I've heard it with my own ears. Women say, I won't marry the dude that I've had children with because I would lose assistance. Because he doesn't make as much money as I receive on government assistance. Not understanding that if you marry, that union will be blessed and you would actually receive more. You would get more, because what we do know is that married couples are the wealthiest people in our country.
That's right.
But these people have been sold such a bad bill of goods, and they've on purpose decided that, hey, we'll destroy our family. And they're destroying the children along the way. What's really sad is that the numbers that Reagan discussed, they are exacerbated now. You know what I'm saying? I mean, is it what we called a major problem or something that would be considered catastrophic? I mean, I don't even know. I mean, could the people look at what we have going on right now? They would say, man, I don't know if we're, we might be beyond repair, at this point.
That's the question.
It's insane how bad off we are. And, You have one side saying, hey, let's continue down this road.
Well, since we started out this morning with the great Ronald Reagan, I would like to introduce another great from our time, and that is Thomas Sowell, who said, everything is new to those who don't know history.
That's right.
And so what we find is that the human condition continues to repeat itself, in that human beings seem to always want to try and conquer the ills of the environment. We want to try and say, if there's poverty, how and where can we stop it out? Whenever there's a problem that comes in human condition, we have now want to use government to try and stop out and to eradicate and to end all of the afflictions that human beings have. And we don't understand why, no matter how much money, how much time, and how much effort, and how big we grow the government, and how much we go to bankrupt ourselves, the human condition continues to persist. And the reason is because we are using the wrong medicine for the affliction. The disparities that we find come from disobedience. They don't come from the human environment. And so if we want to clear up poverty, Wise just said, married men and women are not poor. If we want to work on wayward children and children who are acting out, Crystal just said family takes care of that. Fathers in the home takes care of that. What they are doing, and when I say they, I mean the left, and at this point through the Democrat Party, is they are trying to tell people, do not change your behavior. Live any way you want to live, and let the government mitigate the consequences of your bad behavior and your bad decisions. And it never worked. It didn't work in Reagan's time. It will not work in our time. There is no government so big. There is no money so great, so long, that we can cure the human affliction of disobedience from the order that God gave. So people are simply going to have to say, if you want to get rid of disparities, the answer to getting rid of disparities is not socialism. It is not Marxism. It is not communism. It is obedience.
Amen.
I want to hear from you guys in the comment section. What are your thoughts? Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notifications on to all so you never miss an upload. Consider joining the ARP family or buy your brother a coffee. That link's in the description box below. Join us Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for ARP in the morning. And as always, keep God first, stay prayed up. We'll catch up with you all next time. Peace.
It is God who arms me with strength. Yeah, I'm battle ready. He trains my hands for battle. My heart stays steady. But thanks be to God, He gives us the victory. Through my Lord Jesus Christ, fear can't live in me. I was down to the dirt, red clay on my shoes, old pain in my shirt, oh so bruised. In the Lord hit my chest, kicked death from my breath, put power in my step.